She was standing at the edge of the penthouse balcony, the skyline burning gold beneath her, and she asked the question that had haunted him for 5 years. Why did you leave me? The wind whipped her silk gown around her legs, and for a moment, he saw the girl he'd promised forever, not the woman hardened by betrayal. His hands itched to reach for her, but the steel of his restraint was stronger than any longing. He inhaled the scent of her, faint perfume mixed with rain, and it hit him. Every empire he had built, every deal he had closed, had never filled the void her absence carved in him. And now she was here, in the world he had conquered, and he had nothing but the truth, raw and trembling. He was ready to kneel, not as a plea, but as a vow. The champagne crystal glimmered under the chandelier as she entered the gala, every eye following her like a spotlight. He watched from across the room, hidden behind a sea of power suits and silk ties, the memory of her laughter echoing in the marble halls. Her diamond earrings caught the light in his pulse in equal measure. She had changed her elegance sharper, her smile edged with caution, but the curve of her neck, the tilt of her chin, was undeniably hers. He had sworn never to love, never to soften, yet here she was, a walking contradiction of danger and desire. As she moved toward the velvet staircase, he felt a primal tug, the memory of vows broken and whispered promises resurrecting in his chest. For a fleeting second, he imagined grabbing her hand and running from the world, but business, reputation, and the ghosts of his own arrogance held him frozen. She noticed him then, the moment their eyes collided like a storm against glass. Her lips parted slightly, disbelief painting her features, and he felt the weight of every missed anniversary, every unsent apology, pressed down on him. The air between them thickened, almost visible, as if the room itself was holding its breath. He remembered leaving her at the altar, how the dress had clung to her trembling body, how her tears had stained satin on. The memory was a knife turned inward. Now, in his tailored suit, a man sculpted by power and control, he was nothing without her presence. She didn't speak, but her silence screamed judgment and yearning at once. He took a step forward, reckless, and the world blurred, leaving only the electric tension of two hearts once intertwined, now orbiting dangerously close. Her heels clicked on the marble, each echo a countdown to the collision they both feared. She was brilliant, untouchable, surrounded by wealth and whispered envy, yet somehow vulnerable, and it drew him in against his better judgment. The crowd seemed to dissolve, leaving only the sharp scent of her perfume, the soft sway of her gown, and the past clawing back with every heartbeat. He could see the subtle tremor in her hand, the one she tried to hide with an expensive clutch, and it ignited something long dormant, a protective instinct that had nothing to do with money or power. A memory flashed of her laughing atop a sunlit terrace, and he felt his carefully constructed walls cracking. He was a CEO who had controlled empires, but control over her, impossible, irretrievable, intoxicating. In the corner of the room, his bodyguard's gaze was relentless, a silent warning. He had broken every rule by hiring her security for the night, knowing full well that their proximity could ignite fire where strategy should rule. She hadn't recognized the bodyguard's conflicted loyalties, nor the subtle ease with which he hovered near her, ensuring her safety while keeping the world's chaos at bay. He wanted to tell her the truth, to admit that some risks were worth the fall, but words stuck in his throat like shattered glass. Her eyes met his again, flaring with the memory of betrayal and the thrill of the unknown. The attraction simmered, a dangerous current beneath the polished surface of champagne and chandeliers, daring them both to break rules they'd sworn to uphold. He followed her into the garden terrace, the city lights glittering below like scattered diamonds. Rain began to fall, soft and deliberate, making her hair cling to her cheek in a way that made his heart stutter. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, but there was no accusation in her tone, only the fragile veil of fear over desire. He stepped closer, the space between them charged with everything unspoken, everything denied. "I couldn't stay away," he admitted, voice low, rough from years of silence. She looked at him then, eyes brimming with a storm of memories, and for the first time, he saw the little cracks where her armor didn't reach. Her hand trembled as she brushed rain from her cheek, unaware that he would do anything to erase the years of heartache. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the terrace in a fleeting, divine glow. She gasped, startled by the sudden brilliance, and he seized the moment to close the gap. Fingers brushing against hers, tentative yet charged with intent. Her pulse was audible, rapid and erratic, betraying the cool composure she projected in front of the world. He traced a line from her wrist to her elbow, memorizing every inch as if he could claim back lost years with a touch. "I never stopped," he confessed, his jaw tight, eyes holding her captive. Her lips parted, the world falling away into shared heartbeats and unspoken promises, and then footsteps echoed behind them, sharp and deliberate, threatening the fragile intimacy they had carved. The intruder was her assistant, breathless, eyes wide. "You need to come in," he said, urgency etched into his expression. She glanced at him, torn between loyalty, duty, and the reckless pull toward the man she once loved. He tightened his grip subtly, warning her without words, and her gaze met his, a storm of defiance and desire. The assistant didn't understand the history, the unhealed wounds, or the gravitational pull between two people who had once shared forever. She gave a half smile, one that broke his composure, and turned away, leaving him with the taste of rain and longing on his tongue. He watched her retreat, heart hammering with the ache of near touch and the thrill of unresolved tension. Back inside the penthouse, the party roared round them, but he saw only her. The music throbbed like a heartbeat, and he followed her through the crowd, each step deliberate, predatory, protective. Her gaze flicked over her shoulder, challenging, inviting, warning. In the private suite he cornered her, the city lights painting stripes of gold across her face. He could read every emotion, every hesitation, every hidden desire in the tilt of her jaw, the way her fingers curled around the stem of her glass. 5 years, she said, voice trembling, and you think a confession changes anything? He leaned closer, letting the scent of expensive perfume and rain-damp hair intoxicate him, daring her to defy gravity and reason at the same time. She shook her head, a mixture of laughter and exasperation, tears glimmering at the corners of her eyes. You were supposed to be my forever, she whispered, and the weight of those words sank into him, pressing against every facade he had built. He swallowed hard, the taste of regret, bitter, yet somehow sweet with longing. I failed you, he admitted, voice barely audible over the low hum of the city below. She flinched, yet didn't retreat. Her defiance melted in the glow of neon lights and unspoken attraction, and he realized that her heart, like his, had never truly moved on. Every boundary he had sworn to uphold felt meaningless in her presence. The storm outside raged, rain hammering against floor-to-ceiling windows, the penthouse vibrating with its fury. He took her hand, trembling, and brought it to his lips. A pulse shot through his chest like gunfire. If I fall for you again, she started, voice trembling with vulnerability, I'll be destroyed. He smiled, dark, dangerous, and honest. Then I'll make sure I'm the only one who can break you, he whispered. The heat between them crackled, a dangerous dance on the edge of reason and ruin. Their bodies leaned in, almost colliding, the air thick with desire and the scent of past promises. Suddenly, her phone vibrated violently, the screen flashing a single word, emergency. Her eyes widened, panic eclipsing desire. He tried to pull her closer, but she stepped back, torn between the pull of the man who had abandoned her and the duty she could not ignore. The moment shattered like glass, leaving only jagged edges of longing and regret. It's happening again, she whispered, voice shaking, and his stomach dropped. The world he had built, the control he wielded, seemed to collapse in that instant. The storm outside mirrored the one inside him, furious, unrelenting, and completely uncontainable. He grabbed her hand, eyes locking onto hers with a desperate intensity. Whatever it is, he said, voice firm, low, unwavering, we face it together. She hesitated, the ghost of past betrayal flickering in her gaze, but something deeper, unspoken, pulled her toward him. The city trembled beneath them, rain cascading down the glass walls, thunder rumbling like the heartbeat of fate itself. His thumb brushed hers, tentative, electric. She inhaled sharply, and for a fleeting moment, it was just the two of them against the world, their history, and every danger waiting beyond the penthouse doors. And then another alert buzzed, louder, more urgent, splitting the tension like a knife. He stared at the phone screen she clutched, horror washing over him in waves. It's from him, she breathed, voice small, almost a whisper. His jaw tightened. The name ignited a firestorm of fear and anger within him. The man who had threatened their lives, torn their worlds apart, had returned. She looked at him, eyes wide, frozen between terror and trust. He didn't hesitate. Dropping to one knee, a bold, defiant move in the penthouse soaked with rain and lightning, he took her hand in his. I'll protect you, he vowed, every word a promise of redemption, obsession, and a second chance. Her lips parted in shock, heart racing, but before she could respond, the door slammed open behind them. The library smelled of aged leather and polished wood, the city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. She traced her fingers along the spine of a book she didn't intend to read, feeling him behind her before she even turned. He leaned close, and the scent of his cologne sandalwood and something darker metallic made her stomach twist. "You shouldn't be here alone," he murmured, voice low, vibrating against her ear. She shivered, aware of the dangerous nearness, the space between them electric. She wanted to step back, but her body betrayed her, drawn to him like gravity. His hand hovered near hers, almost touching, fingers trembling with restraint. Their almost kiss lingered, a promise and a warning, the silence thicker than any words, the past whispered in the shadows of the shelves, and she wondered if she could trust this man, again if the fire between them was real or just another illusion he wielded like power. At the charity gala, the room gleamed with chandeliers and whispered ambition. Every glance she received carried the weight of expectation, but his eyes followed her with a ferocity no one dared challenge. Men who thought themselves untouchable faltered when he appeared. A predator cloaked in Armani, she felt the tension coil in her chest, desire mixed with the pulse of danger. When he appeared at her side, fingers brushing hers, the electric jolt made her knees weak. "Stay close," he murmured, the possessiveness in his tone delicious and terrifying. Guests whispered, unaware of the storm beneath polite smiles. She wondered if she had misjudged him, if leaving him had been a mistake, but she also questioned whether she could survive the world he lived in, the enemies, the money, the unrelenting expectations. And yet, in his presence, she felt more alive than she had in years. Late-night conversations stretched into hours, shadows dancing across his penthouse as the city slept below. They sat close, shoulders brushing, the quiet intensity of proximity unraveling walls she had built. His laughter was rare but genuine, and it shook something loose inside her. She confessed secrets she'd locked away, trembling as he listened, eyes soft but piercing. "You never have to be perfect with me," he said, voice like velvet wrapped in steel. When he reached for her hand, their fingers tangled naturally, sending shivers up her spine. She almost leaned into him, almost surrendered, but doubt gnawed at her. Was this man's obsession genuine love, or a dangerous power play? Her chest ached with the pull of him, the tension almost unbearable, the lines between desire, fear, and trust blurring with every heartbeat. He escorted her to a private rooftop garden, rain-slicked tiles glittering beneath them. The city sprawled below, and in the quiet, she felt him fully unguarded for the first time. "I never wanted to hurt you," he confessed, the rawness in his voice surprising her. She searched his face, seeing the man who had abandoned her and the one who still worshipped her silently. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the sharp planes of his jaw. She wanted to close the distance, to feel the heat of him against her, but uncertainty held her back. "How do I know this isn't another betrayal?" she asked, trembling. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing tears she hadn't realized were there. "Because I'll wait," he whispered, "long enough for you to see I've changed, or long enough to prove you wrong." Her investigation into his empire uncovered fragments of hidden past cell companies, shadowed dealings, whispers of enemies who would kill to see him fall. Fear wrapped around her, tightening with every revelation. She confronted him in his office, skyscraper windows glowing behind him like a halo of power. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, voice raw. He leaned back, expression unreadable, exuding authority and danger. "Because I wanted to protect you," he said quietly, and she laughed bitterly, a tear escaping. "Protect me by lying." The distance between them was palpable, tension vibrating in the air. Her heart ached, torn between love and betrayal, desire and caution. The truth hit like a hammer. The man she thought she knew was layered in secrets, and she wasn't sure if she could survive loving him again. The storm intensified one evening as someone from her past appeared at his doorstep, a rival billionaire with a grudge and history with her. He didn't hide his contempt, and she felt trapped, caught between past mistakes and present danger. He didn't flinch, though, standing between them with a predator's poise. Every muscle in his body radiated threat. Her pulse raced, awareness sharp as knives. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, voice low, controlled, yet deadly. She realized then that his world wasn't just glamorous, it was perilous, and her heart, tangled in desire and fear, leaned toward him instinctively. He placed his hand at her lower back, a silent claim, as if saying, without words, that she belonged with him in spite of everything. And for the first time, she believed it. At the penthouse, their confrontation erupted in the tension of truth and near confessions. She accused him of manipulation, betrayal, lying about the depth of his feelings. He responded with raw honesty, stripped of arrogance. "I never lied about this," he said, chest heaving, his thumb brushing hers with an electricity that made her knees tremble. Tears streaked her cheeks, mingling anger and longing. They were almost touching, lips so close she could feel his heartbeat, smell the heat of his skin, the leather and sandalwood of his jacket. Every touch, every look, was both a threat and a comfort. She wanted to fall into him, wanted to believe, but the fear of heartbreak held her in suspended agony. His gaze softened for a heartbeat, then hardened with resolve. "I will prove it to you," or I'll lose you forever. A gala turned treacherous when one of his enemies approached, daring to cross the invisible line between her and him. He moved like a shadow, protective, dangerous, and in the process, she realized the depth of his obsession and care. He guided her with a firm hand, fingers brushing hers in deliberate proximity. Her breath caught every time his thumb grazed her skin. She was mesmerized, torn between exhilaration and terror. Around them the world moved with glittering chaos, but inside the bubble of their proximity, nothing else mattered. The line between love and control blurred, leaving only the raw pull of desire and devotion, and she finally understood he would fight for her in a way no one else ever could. Secrets surfaced one rainy evening when she discovered a hidden ledger detailing accounts under his control, including one tied directly to her late father's estate. Shock rooted her to the penthouse floor. He appeared behind her, a hand warm on her shoulder, grounding yet terrifying. "I didn't want you to worry," he said, eyes dark with guilt and determination. Betrayal stung, yet so did the undeniable attraction that pulled her toward him. "You lied again," she hissed, voice trembling. "Not about you," he corrected gently, pulling her into his chest. The heat of his body, the scent of rain and cologne, made it impossible to think clearly. She realized then that loving him meant surrendering to chaos, danger, and the unknown. Her heart raced, caught between the man she feared and the man she craved. A late-night confession broke the silence between them, the skyline glowing behind the penthouse windows. "I've never stopped thinking about you," he admitted, fingers entwined with hers. The vulnerability in his voice made her chest tighten. She searched his eyes, seeing sincerity beneath the layers of control and wealth. Almost instinctively, she leaned closer, almost daring to close the gap. Electricity sizzled, every nerve alive with longing and fear. She questioned if it was real, if his feelings were genuine, yet the way he inhaled sharply when she brushed her fingers over his hand told her the answer she wanted. But just as her lips hovered near his, the phone rang a private alert, urgent, sharp, reminding them both that the world outside was unforgiving and their connection was still under siege. He pulled her into the office, shielding her as reports of threats poured in. His control was absolute, terrifying, yet intoxicating. The contract lay on the mahogany desk, its weight heavier than gold. He had 10 days to finalize the merger that would secure his empire or lose it all. She entered quietly, gown clinging to curves, hair wet from rain outside. He didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered, pen hovering over paper. She stepped closer, breath catching. "Then don't sign it," she whispered, his jaw clenched, anger and desire warring. Her eyes held him, unflinching, a reminder of what he risked. His hand brushed hers over the contract. Sparks ignited. The world outside, the ticking deadlines, the business he'd built, it all faded. She was the danger he wanted most. His voice dropped gravelly with need. "If I choose you, everything else falls apart." She swallowed, knowing this wasn't just temptation. This was desperation, raw and unfiltered. One choice, one moment. Everything teetered on the edge. Late-night winds whipped across the balcony, rain soaking their clothes, the city glittering like molten gold beneath them. He held her close, forehead against hers, teeth gnawing his bottom lip. "I can't lose you again," he whispered. She pressed her hands to his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart, every beat a confession. "Then don't," she murmured, voice trembling. The world demanded his attention, family pressures, rivals circling but for a fleeting instant. The universe narrowed to 2 bodies, 2 hearts, 2 breaths. Fingers grazed, lips hovered, and the tension threatened to snap like a live wire. He wanted her, not for a moment, not for desire, but for salvation. She wanted him, though she feared the consequences. Lightning split the sky, thunder rattling the glass, and he kissed her not fully, not yet but enough to leave a mark, an imprint of longing that would haunt them both through the coming storm. The gala was a battlefield disguised as elegance. Influential families, journalists, and corporate sharks circled, all unaware of the war happening in his chest. She moved gracefully, every eye drawn to her, but he stayed near, his presence a warning. "Don't let anyone get close," he murmured in her ear. She leaned into him, the heat of his body shielding her, their fingers brushing, each contact electric. Eyes met, and no words were needed. Every glance said, "I will fight for you." A rival approached, offering smiles coated with malice. He intercepted silently, positioning himself between them. Tension radiated, palpable. Her pulse raced. She had never known fear so entwined with desire. She realized then that the man before her, ruthless and untouchable, would sacrifice everything to protect her. The thought both terrified and enthralled her in his arms. She felt both danger and safety collide. In the private study, hours later, the storm outside echoed the turmoil inside. Rain pelted windows. The city blurred into streaks of light. They were close, shoulder to shoulder, bodies brushing, every inch alive. "Why is this so hard?" she asked, voice trembling. He inhaled sharply, jaw tight. "Because I can't protect you from the world and my own heart at the same time." Her hand hovered over his, trembling with need. She leaned forward, daring to close the gap, to defy logic. His lips brushed hers, just a whisper, a promise, an almost confession. The electricity surged, Breath mingled, time slowed. Outside, thunder crashed. Inside, they hovered on the edge of surrender, knowing every stolen second could be their last. She pressed against him, needing proof of the love he swore was real. He pulled back, guilt and obsession warring, leaving them gasping, desperate, incomplete. Family demands intruded like a blade the next morning. His mother's voice, silken steel, reminded him of alliances and appearances. You cannot risk scandal. Marry Charlotte. It is expected. He clenched his fists beneath the table, jaw rigid. She watched quietly, heartbreaking, realizing the world would never bend easily. I'm not Charlotte, he said finally, voice low, lethal. She reached for his hand, grasping it as if that alone could anchor him. Then fight, she urged softly. His eyes burned with conflict, storm clouds of duty and desire colliding. The tension nearly crushed her chest. She wanted to scream, to push him toward surrender, yet feared the consequences. Every word from his lips carried the weight of unspoken love, sacrifice, and danger. In that moment, she understood the cost of loving him, and that cost could be unbearable. A late-night drive through rain-soaked streets brought them closer than they dared in days. Her head rested on his shoulder, small and vulnerable against the armor he never removed. Neon lights flashed across his face, highlighting sharp features softened only for her. I can't let anyone hurt you, he said, voice low, trembling. She tilted her head, lips brushing the shell of his ear. Then let me in. Let me choose you. The world outside was chaos, enemies, contracts, obligations, but inside the car, they carved out a fragile sanctuary. Fingers entwined, hearts racing, breaths synchronized. Every glance was confession, every touch a plea. He wanted to give her everything, yet knew doing so could destroy everything else. They were on the edge of a precipice, teetering between ruin and love, and neither knew how to leap without falling. A sudden threat. Arrival, CEO intent on sabotage. Messages, threats, agents lurking outside his penthouse. He barely slept, barely ate, consumed with guarding her and preserving the empire. She watched him work, body taut, jaw clenched, every movement a study in control. Despite exhaustion, every glance toward her carried longing, need, and warning. One night she slipped into his office, tracing the line of his jaw, hands brushing over the warmth of his skin. He inhaled sharply, eyes locking on hers, hunger and restraint colliding. I can't lose you, he admitted. She shivered, knowing the words weren't empty. Danger pressed in from all sides, yet in this moment, they were unbreakable together. Every second away from him was agony, every stolen glance a lifeline. Their love burned in secret, fierce, unrelenting. The pressure of the contract deadline escalated. Investors demanded signatures. The board watched his every move. He could hear her breathing behind him, feel her presence like a pulse against his back. I want you to have it all, she whispered. He turned, hand cupping her cheek, thumb brushing tears she hadn't noticed. You already have me, he replied, voice trembling. The revelation was both surrender and confession. She pressed into him, lips just brushing, warmth radiating between them. The storm outside mirrored their chaos inside, wind and rain hammering the penthouse. Every barrier they had erected feared doubt. Duty crumbled beneath the weight of desire and truth. Their almost kisses became near collisions, every touch electric, every breath shared, building to the inevitable, terrifying, exquisite climax of surrender. One night, alone in the penthouse, he destroyed the contract with deliberate precision. The shredding machine devoured legal obligations, mergers, and wealth that could have cemented his power forever. She watched, wide-eyed, heart clattering against ribs. I choose you, he said simply, looking at her as if she were air, as if the rest of the world no longer existed. Rain streaked the windows, thunder booming like applause for their rebellion. She ran to him, hands clutching his coat, tears mingling with raindrops. He held her close, lips finally claiming hers fully, with the weight of confession, obsession, and love. For a long, breathless moment, nothing existed but them, the storm, the city, and the truth that some things were worth losing everything for. Morning arrived, muted, pale light spilling into the penthouse. Their exhaustion was physical, emotional, and intoxicating. She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Outside, the world threatened and demanded, but inside, they were fragile and unbreakable. We're not safe, she whispered, fear threading her tone. He kissed the crown of her head. I don't care, he said simply. We're alive, we're together. That's all that matters. Silence stretched, comforting, a respite before inevitable chaos. Their hands intertwined, fingers tightening, an unspoken promise that they would face every storm, every threat, every challenge, side by side. For the first time, she believed in their survival, not just of life or wealth, but of love itself. Enemies intensified, circling like wolves, testing boundaries, exploiting weaknesses. Every movement was calculated. Every glance toward her carried danger. Yet, sunlight spilled across the penthouse floor, painting gold streaks over white marble and silk rugs. She stirred beneath the warmth of the duvet, still tangled in the sheets in his embrace. His hand traced idle patterns across her back, slow, deliberate, intimate. She inhaled, realizing the scent of his cologne was no longer danger, it was home. "Morning," he murmured, voice soft, almost shy. She smiled, chest swelling with quiet joy. For the first time, she didn't feel the pulse of chaos outside. The city could burn, contracts could collapse, enemies could circle, but here, in this light, with him, the world had shrunk to the slow rhythm of breathing and whispered love. Every line of his jaw, every shadowed curve of his body, reminded her that he had returned not as a man hardened by regret, but as someone who had found himself through her. He rose, bare feet padding across the cool marble, and moved into the kitchen. The smell of freshly ground coffee drifted through the penthouse. A mundane act transformed into intimacy. She watched him from the doorway, hair damp, robe loosely tied, pouring hot water with irreverent patience. "Coffee?" he asked, holding the cup toward her, eyes twinkling. She took it, fingers brushing his, a spark like their first touch igniting again. The city roared below, but the penthouse felt suspended in time. She sipped, savoring more than caffeine the quiet, domestic ritual of being with him, of choosing each other without contracts, deadlines, or threats. She realized then, heart blooming, that this was forever. Not the stolen moments, not the chaos, not the almost kisses. Here was real. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, and the world outside fell away. Later they wandered the penthouse together, laughing softly, touching lightly, exploring a domesticity neither had dared imagine. He opened a drawer she'd never noticed, revealing a collection of photographs him alone, smiling faintly at memories of her. Her fingers brushed over the edges, tracing his handwriting on captions. Her laugh saved me. "Never forget this." She laughed, a sound he hadn't heard in years. He took her hand, thumb stroking her knuckles gently. "I never want to forget again," he whispered. She leaned up, pressing a light kiss to his lips, small but laden with the weight of every year they'd lost. In that quiet, reflective intimacy, there were no longer the billionaire and the betrayed fiancé. There were two people who had endured storms, enemies, and expectations, emerging whole, tethered by love stronger than power, wealth, or fear. She found herself in his study, watching him work with calm authority, yet now he moved with ease, no longer haunted by regret. Papers lay in neat stacks. His phone remained silent. She lingered in the doorway, captivated by the mundane poetry of his presence. He glanced up, catching her gaze, and smiled, a slow, tender curve that held all the gratitude, relief, and love he had never spoken aloud. "You make this feel like home," she said softly. He stood, crossing the room to her, fingers brushing her cheek, thumb tracing her jawline. "You saved me," he said, voice breaking with quiet intensity. She pressed her lips to his chest, heart full. "Then let's save each other every day," she whispered. For the first time there was no urgency, no danger, just the enduring pulse of love fully realized. Evenings became a ritual, candles flickering, city lights spilling across glass walls. They cooked together, laughing over spilled sauce and shared stories. He pulled her close mid-step, forehead resting against hers. "Do you remember the night it all started?" he asked, tone teasing but soft. She nodded, heart swelling with bittersweet nostalgia. "We almost lost everything," she said, eyes glistening. "And yet here we are." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, eyes drinking her in. Here and forever. They shared a quiet kiss, unhurried, tasting the sweetness of survival, the satisfaction of having fought for each other. No grand gestures were needed. Every glance, every brush of skin against skin, carried weight. Love had emerged not in chaos or contracts, but in the calm moments afterward, tender, patient, unshakable. One evening, he knelt before her, not in urgency, not in desperation, but deliberately, with a simple, elegant box in hand. Candlelight shimmered across diamonds that caught the city's reflection. "I should have done this 5 years ago," he said softly. "But I need you to know this is real, not a contract, not an obligation. Me, always you." Her hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling unbidden. She realized that every almost kiss, every tension-filled night, every storm they had weathered had led to this moment. She nodded, voice trembling. "Yes, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, their lips meeting in a slow, deliberate kiss that spoke of promises kept, of love proven against every obstacle. The city below was quiet, insignificant compared to the world they had claimed together. The next morning, sunlight streamed through sheer curtains as he poured her tea, cinnamon floating in the steam. She sat cross-legged on the sofa, robe soft, hair cascading over shoulders. He placed the cup in her hands, fingers brushing hers lightly. "You always take it with honey," he said, voice low. She smiled, the simplicity of the gesture hitting her harder than any grand gesture ever could. She looked up at him and thought, "This is forever. Not contracts, not chaos, not rivalries or deadlines, just us." He leaned down, lips brushing hers softly. "I love you," he whispered. Not dramatic, not desperate, just true. She felt the weight of every trial, every storm glance condensed into those 3 words, and it made her chest ache with quiet perfection. They walked the balcony in the evening, city lights glittering like scattered gems below. Hands intertwined, he pulled her into his side. Silence enveloped them, comfortable, reflective, a calm after a storm. "I never imagined this," she said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. He chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "Neither did I," he admitted, lips grazing her hair. "But I can't imagine anything else." They stood like that, breathing together, watching the city sparkle beneath them. The tension of years melted into warmth. She realized she had not just been saved, but transformed. The man who had once walked away now walked beside her, stronger, gentler, tethered to her heart in ways neither contracts nor chaos could undo. Dinner became ritualized simplicity, home-cooked meals, slow music, laughter spilling into empty rooms. One night, she caught him watching her across the kitchen counter, eyes soft, gaze unfettered. She froze, feeling every past betrayal, every storm, dissolve in that moment. He smiled faintly, shrugging. "I'm still captivated," he said. She laughed, heart soaring. "Still," she teased, stepping closer. Fingers brushed, electric and gentle. The city outside roared with its endless ambition, yet inside, they existed in a timeless bubble, each day a testament to what survived. The quiet domesticity felt revolutionary, triumphant. Love, once nearly destroyed, had become their constant. A soft rain fell one morning, tapping windows with gentle rhythm. She watched him adjust curtains, sunlight shimmering on his hair. He turned, eyes locking on hers, expression tender. Without words, he crossed the room, hand extended. She took it, and he spun her lightly, laughter spilling. For a heartbeat, they were weightless, carefree, alive. Then he dipped slightly, lips brushing hers in a kiss filled with the accumulated longing of years. She gasped, heart full, realizing that every storm, every near loss, every danger, had led them to this calm, unshakable joy. "I love you," he whispered again, as if reminding the universe. She pressed her forehead to his, smiling through tears. "Forever," she replied, and it was enough. Evenings became ritualized, candles lit, music low. They danced slowly, barefoot in the middle of the living room, laughter mingling with soft sighs. Every touch was deliberate, tender, a promise renewed. He whispered memories from stormy nights, secrets from boardrooms, confessions from hearts raw with love. She clung to him, savoring each syllable, each heartbeat, each warmth. Outside, the city roared with ambition and chaos. Inside, their world had contracted to two hearts in synchrony, two souls claiming the quiet after destruction. The past was acknowledged but powerless. Every glance, every brush of hand, every breath shared was testament to survival, trust, and enduring passion. On a quiet rooftop, they finally stood together, city lights reflecting in his eyes. His arms wrapped around her, steady, warm, protective. She pressed close, head against his chest, breathing in the steady rhythm that had become home. "I never thought happiness could feel like this," she whispered, voice soft. He smiled, a slow, genuine curve that lit the night. "It does," he murmured, lips brushing her temple. The world below roared, but above, suspended in wind and light, they existed in stillness.